Welcome and good evening, everyone. My name is Marcus Martin. I'm Vice President and Chief Officer for Diversity and Equity at the University of Virginia. I'm also Professor of Emergency Medicine, which means I know how to dial 911. Just kidding, but I do know how to dial 911. The weather today has been pretty treacherous, very threatening. I think it's raining pretty hard now, so I'm so happy to see so many faces here, so many wonderful faces here tonight as we honor Julian Bond. We are here tonight to honor the life and work of Professor Julian Bond. Julian is a nationally recognized civil rights icon. He has dedicated much of his life to the causes of civil rights and social justice. Julian's writings, documentaries, and television appearances are numerous. His record of service and leadership in the struggle for civil rights is extraordinary. Julian is the recipient of the Library of Congress Living Legend Award, and he's received many other distinguished honors. His impact on us here in Charlottesville has been very positive, with over 2 decades of service to the University of Virginia, which is why we are here to honor him this evening. Julian and his lovely wife, Pam Horowitz, grace us with their presence here tonight. Julian and Pam, thank you. Thank you. Pam is a civil rights attorney who has made her own mark in the struggle for human rights. Now, I've had the good fortune to travel with Julian and Pam during the first UVA-sponsored Civil Rights South tour that they led some years ago. I've also dined many times with Julian and Pam over the past 5 years. We've brought together diverse faculty, staff, and community members from diverse disciplines to enhance new social and professional relationships. We held 60 dinners over 5 years with about 1,600 people in attendance. I attended more dinners with Pam and Julian than I have with anyone else in my entire adult life, with the exception of my wife, Donna. Now, there were only about 25 people or so in attendance at each of the dinners, so we got to know each other fairly well. And remarkably, Julian and Pam attended all of these dinners. And just as remarkable, we ate the same Southern-style food every time. That's right, every time. And some folks in here who've hosted the dinners know all about it. The food was always prepared just the way that Julian likes it, except maybe once or twice, and he was able to tell the difference then. And we always took time for each person to introduce himself or herself at the dinners. So Julian, we thought about having that Southern-style dinner tonight and the individual introductions one more time, but since this is a much larger group, we decided neither tradition would be advisable here tonight. But what a wonderful gathering here. Beautiful people here tonight, and we thank you so much for being here to honor Julian. I would like to thank the planning team for the wonderful collaboration, the Office for Diversity and Equity, the Office of Engagement, and the College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Thank you, Megan Faulkner, Althea Brooks, Aaron Hall, Sarah Gould-Stotts, and Cindy Frederick. Thank you very much. And thank you, Amanda Lotus, for the slideshow. It was fantastic. Didn't you enjoy that slideshow? Yeah. I was speaking to Julian a little bit coming down the aisle. He said he saw some photos that he had never seen before, so he doesn't recall seeing before. So all good, all good. And I would also like to recognize Eduardo Montes-Bradley. Eduardo's there in the office, in the audience there. Yep, great. So Eduardo is the director and filmmaker of the documentary that we will see a little bit later tonight. Eduardo, thank you so much for highlighting Julian's lifelong dedication to human rights and education. Now, it is my honor to introduce to you the 8th president of the University of Virginia, President Teresa Sullivan.
Wow. Thank you and good evening. And I want to thank Dr. Martin because he's worked so hard on this year's MLK Community Celebration. We're very honored that you were all able to join with us tonight. Dr. Martin and his colleagues in the Office for Diversity and Equity work together every year with leaders in the Charlottesville community to plan a wonderful series of events to honor the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. They've done a wonderful job this year, and we've still got a few more events to go. And I'm so glad you were able to join us for this one. Tonight, we are honoring the legacy of a great man, Julian Bond. Most of us know that Julian Bond has been a driving force for social change for more than 50 years as a civil rights leader, as a politician, as a scholar, and as a writer. As you heard, he was named a living legend by the U.S. Library of Congress in recognition of these achievements. But not everyone knows the magnitude of Julian's contributions to the University of Virginia. So let me tell you a little bit about them. Julian retired from U.Va. last May after a distinguished 20-year career as a history professor in our Corcoran Department of History. During his 2 decades at U.Va., he taught more than 5,000 of our students. The students in his classroom had a rare opportunity because they listened to Julian draw on his firsthand knowledge of the civil rights movement and its participants. And he did this to teach civil rights in the larger context of American history. Julian also led an annual Civil Rights South Tour, a 6-day university-sponsored trip to landmark sites in the civil rights movement. Once again, he enriched this experience for the participants with his firsthand knowledge of the civil rights struggle. Julian has also co-directed the Explorations in Black Leadership Oral History Project, which is part of UVA's Institute for Public History. All of Julian's contributions to UVA created wonderful opportunities for members of our university community, but especially for our students. As we know, many of the students who graduate from UVA take on influential roles in their careers and communities, whether that is in Charlottesville or around the world. So it's important that they have knowledge and understanding of the American civil rights movement. Some 5,000 of them had the privilege of gaining that knowledge and understanding in Julian Bond's classroom. In honor of these achievements and contributions, the university plans to establish the H. Julian Bond Professorship in Civil Rights and Social Justice. This will be a permanent position within the College of Arts and Sciences to sustain Julian's scholarly legacy. Endowing a chair in Julian's honor will let future generations of students study civil and human rights. I can't imagine a more appropriate tribute for a man whose character and influence touched so many lives over the last half-century. Funding for this endowed professorship now stands at $1.5 million, or about half of our $3 million goal. I'm very grateful to the alumni, parents, and friends who provided generous support to date for this professorship that will honor and sustain Julian Bond's legacy. My husband and I personally contributed to this fund, and the reason we did that is that when we're gone, we want to be sure that our children's children are still able to learn about the civil rights movement and to learn about the values that the American project came to realize because of the people who stood up for what they believed in. If you would also like to support this, on the back of your program for tonight, you'll find ways to contact the university about making a gift. It's a very worthy way for us to further honor the man we honor tonight. I'm personally grateful to Julian for his many years of service at UVA, and it's a privilege for me to help to honor him tonight.
Terry, thank you so much, and thank you for your ongoing support of the Community MLK celebration. We appreciate those remarks. I now have the honor of introducing a premier university choir. Founded in 1972 at UVA, the Black Voices Gospel Choir aims to demonstrate Christian love to audiences through gospel music and true fellowship. So we'll now ask the Black Voices Gospel Choir to come on up. Will you all please rise for the Black National Anthem? Black voices. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Wow. What a wonderful performance. Thank you, Black Voices. Some of the students here enrolled in my January term course down St. Kitts and Nevis, and towards the end of the day, when we've had a tough day, if you can have a tough day in the Caribbean, they uplift us all with their voices, their wonderful voices. They are awesome. Thank you. It is a privilege now to welcome to the stage Senator Henry Marsh. Henry L. Marsh III earned his law degree at Howard University in 1959. He is a civil rights attorney. He successfully litigated more than 50 school desegregation cases in Virginia. He was elected the first African-American mayor of Richmond in 1977 and elected to the Virginia Senate in 1992. He currently represents the 16th District, consisting of the city of Petersburg, Dinwiddie County, and parts of the city of Richmond, and Chesterfield and Prince George counties. He will share a few remarks about Julian Bond, so please welcome Senator Henry Marsh.
Good evening. Only Julian Bond could bring me up to Charlottesville in the rain and make me miss, for the first time, the Strong Men, Strong Women program by Dominion Resources. This is the first time I missed Julian. And I left my committee meeting early. I left a proxy. Because some of my colleagues were trying to continue their efforts to do evil. I am very honored and happy to be here. Your president spoke to our caucus, 18 African-American members, Senate and House members, and she, in 5 minutes, she charmed us to death. If she'd wanted money, we'd have opened the bank for her. But she has a lot of friends in Richmond and in the General Assembly and around the country. I'm happy to be here, and in the limited time I have, I'm not going to tell you what you already know about Julian Bond. And Julian, you can relax. I'm not going to tell them what I know about you either. But I'd like to share a few experiences I've had with Julian Bond. When I graduated from law school in 1961, I was assured of a job by Oliver Hill, who had offered me a job when I was in college as his partner. When he was later chosen as the outstanding Virginian of the 19th century, I said, he must have been smart. I hadn't finished college, I hadn't gone to law school, I hadn't taken the bar, and he gave me a job. He was a genius. But Vernon Jordan was a classmate a year ahead of me, and Doug Weiler and Vernon Jordan and I used to associate a little bit. They would go out and party, and I would stay in my room all night and study. But Vernon was a good friend. And he went back to Georgia, and as soon as he got back, he invited me back to Atlanta, Georgia. In case you don't know, Atlanta was the center of political activity for African Americans at that time. We had no elected officials, but Atlanta had about 10 or 15 of them. And they had the Southern Regional Council, who had to speak for black folks because we didn't have our own elected officials. So Vernon got me appointed to the board of directors of the Southern Regional Council, and voter education project. And the only thing I could hear when I went to Atlanta was Julian Bond, Julian Bond. He was indeed a legend in 1961. And Julian, what are you doing still active here in 2013? But Julian was a hero. He was our hero. And that's how I first learned about him. Maynard Jackson hadn't even come on the scene. And we hired John Lewis as our first director of VEP, Voter Education Project. So I had good experiences in Atlanta. But that was just my first chapter with Julian Bond. I became active in the civil rights movement in Virginia. And Julian was our #1 speaker. And whenever Julian was invited to speak to the state NAACP, to colleges and universities, I would be asked to introduce him. I introduced him so many times, I know everything about him. And a couple of times, Julian was traveling so much he missed his plane. And I think he suggested me to introduce him because he knew I'd have a speech ready in case he didn't show up. And on 3 or 4 occasions, Julian, I had to speak for you. They were disappointed, but I had a good time. But that was just the beginning. Julian continued his tremendous mark on the civil rights movement over the years. And I've run into him on many occasions. I've seen him. Julian Bond, I've been interviewed by about 300 different persons over the years. And Julian Bond gave me the most penetrating interview I've ever enjoyed, I guess you can say enjoyed, right here at the University of Virginia. 2 hours of penetrating questions. And he made me think of things I never thought of before. Why did you decide to go into civil rights? Why this, why that? And Julian, I need that interview because I'm writing my memoirs now and I need to remember what I said. But Julian's career transcended all of that. At the time when he challenged the Georgia legislature and when he became the first youngest person ever nominated for vice president, that was an inspiration to many of us. And he got me into a lot of trouble trying to be like him. I'm now chair of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Commission, which is leading a 2-year celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment. This is the 150th year, the sesquicentennial celebration, and the General Assembly of Virginia directed this commission to lead the state in celebration of this. We have on April 13th, we're having a concert with the Richmond Symphony in Richmond Center. We are creating a monument to emancipation. Could you believe that of the 20-some monuments to dead Confederate generals, we have no monuments for civil rights? They lost the war. We won the war. We got the General Assembly to approve the establishment of a civil rights monument in Richmond, Virginia. We got $500,000 to plan it, and we got $5 million from the Senate to build it. Dave, you know what happened when it got to the House. They stripped away the $5 million and left us the $500,000. But we're going to raise enough to have a civil rights monument in Virginia for those who really won the Civil War, the African Americans and the leaders, the white leaders who helped us win the war, and Abraham Lincoln, who's not a popular name in Virginia. How many of you have seen the film Lincoln? I've seen it twice, and I'm going to see it 2 or 3 more times. It's a wonderful story. And someone told me to go to see Django Unchained, and I went to see that. I'm going to see that again, too. I'm going to ask Julian later what he thinks about Django Unchained. This is an exciting time to be a part of the struggle in Virginia and in the United States. And Julian Bond was one of the persons who made that struggle as successful as it had been. I said to Julian a minute ago when I arrived, "How can you retire? Why'd you work so long? You should have retired years ago." And of course, people ask me, "When are you going to retire?" I said, "Well, I'm going to retire while I'm still young, but I got a little juice left yet." This is an important time. I never thought I would live to see an African-American president elected in the United States. And I certainly didn't think I would live to see him reelected for a second term. And if it did happen, I expected to be somebody who would be sort of Thomish, not somebody who is a perfect person for the presidency, because I would support him even if he weren't African American. I would be almost as excited as I am now. So we are indeed fortunate. And what does that have to do with Julian Bond? He helped make it possible. Julian helped make my career possible. And a couple of weeks ago, my alma mater, Virginia Union, conferred upon me the Lifetime Achievement Award, and they plan to establish a Henry Marsh Chair for Social Justice and Civil Rights at Virginia Union University. Julian Bond made that possible. Only years from now will we recognize the impact that Julian had on the struggle for civil rights. He was a tremendous hero for a long time, and it's not just the longevity, it's the quality of his leadership. So I'm pleased to come tonight to congratulate him on retiring in the prime of his career, and to tell him that I'm going to retire before I get old, Julian. I'm going to retire while I'm still going strong. But you will always be an inspiration to me and many others. You have much to be proud of, and so does the University of Virginia for giving you an opportunity to demonstrate your leadership. I do want those notes for my interview, and I'm very honored. University of Virginia is a partner in one of the organizations that I chair, the Martin Luther King Living History and Public Policy Center. And our director is a graduate of the University of Virginia. She drove me up here in the rain, and she's probably somewhere out there now. But you contributed much to the civil rights struggle. And something happened here a few months ago which fired up Virginians and people all over this country. And I'm proud of the response you made to support your president. We're very proud of her, we're very proud of you, and we're very proud of Julian Bond.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Senator Marsh, for those wonderful reflections about Julian, and congratulations on the chair being established in your name. And we like your thoughts about opening the bank up a little bit for Charlottesville area too. So we'll remember that one. Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to have a conversation between Julian Bond and Phyllis Leffler. Phyllis Leffler is the director of the Institute for Public History, and she's a professor in the Department of History at the University of Virginia. She specializes in public and oral history as well as the history of UVA. Phyllis and Julian share a special relationship as colleagues. For the past 13 years, they have co-directed a videotaped oral history project called Explorations in Black Leadership. Their book will be published in 2014 based on the collected interviews of 50 established black leaders in America. So, let's welcome Julian Bond and Phyllis Leffler to the stage.
Is this working? I guess it is. That's great. Well, I'd like to start out simply by saying how thrilled I am to be up here with you, Julian, and also how incredibly meaningful to me this project has been that we've worked on for the last 13 years. So I know for most of this project, you've been the person who's been asking the questions. And now I'm going to get to ask just a few about this film and some larger issues that I think come out of it. So the first question that occurred to me from looking at this wonderful film is that on a number of occasions in the film, it seems to me you talk about life circumstances that highlighted what you called the condition of being black in America. You talk about your experiences at Fort Valley State College as a very young child. You talk about experiences at Lincoln University, engaging with a black intellectual community, but also going to a newly integrated school. The feelings you have about your coach at the George School and your assumptions about things that he might have been thinking. The fear you felt about returning to Georgia and the anxiety of having to go and buy a suit for college. Then the reactions, of course, of white colleagues in the Georgia legislature. And I'm sure the list could go on and on. These are just a few examples. So I wondered if you could comment on to what extent is that condition still a part of the world that you live in? And if it is, do you see this as an ongoing problem in America?
Yes, I do, but before I answer that question, I just want to thank the university for this occasion. It's so great, this film and the audience and the people who are here and the people who came and the people I've run into, some of whom I know, some of whom I don't. It's just wonderful this evening, and particularly Henry Marsh. I met Henry a long time ago, longer than he remembers. We used to have these meetings of black elected officials, and we always have them in small rooms because there are only such a few number of us. And Henry was one of them, and so it's great to see him again. And thank Eduardo for this film, who, when he approached me about it, I thought, why would you want to do that? But he did, and I'm grateful that he did. And now let me get back to answering the question. Dr. Du Bois used to talk about a double consciousness that black Americans had. One consciousness here, one consciousness there. And it was a consciousness built on a racial divide. And more true, I think, during Du Bois' era, but not untrue today. I think people of color have this consciousness, and I think if you ask every person of color in this room, he or she would say, yes, I felt that way. I don't feel that way as much now as I did maybe 20 or 30 years ago, but I felt that way, a separateness from other people while a closeness with other people. And that's what I felt all of my life. And again, the feeling has begun to diminish as I've grown older, as time has passed, but I think it's a condition of being the other in a society. And I have no doubt, and I don't know this to be true, that other groups of people who've been the other feel this way too. I wonder if this is a commonality among Jews. I wonder if it's a commonality among Irish Americans who may, on occasion, feel they are a separate group. If it's a commonality among Catholics who may feel that they're a separate group, or people who feel that for one reason or another, other people have singled them out as being different. So I think it's a commonality among these people, and certainly been a commonality for me.
And do you think that having a black president changes this in any way?
It does it in a slight way, you know, but the oddity of having a black president is for all of the hopes and expectations that this would create a racial nirvana in the United States. If anything, it's made things worse. And public opinion polls tell us that racial enmity has increased since Obama became president, not decreased, as was everyone's hope, certainly my hope. So, on the other hand, I do think Obama's election is important, and the re-election is even more important than the first election, because the first occasion was a great milestone to do something that had never been done before and that most people thought could not be done before. And I couldn't imagine why he thought he could do it. Why would he think so? I guess he's a man of enormous self-confidence, I would imagine. But I wouldn't have thought that could happen. I didn't think it could happen up until he won the Iowa primary. It was only then that I thought he had an opportunity to be president of the United States. Then I thought he'd have a terrible, terrible time getting reelected, a more difficult time getting reelected than he had gotten elected in the first time. And the fact that he did it a second time, I think, is a greater accomplishment than having done it the first time. And I think to some extent, it does speak large volumes to racial problems in America. And it does suggest that the racial temperature has gone down some. Now, how you share that or compare that to these poll results that say racial enmity has gone up, I'm not sure. So I think if it's at all possible that Obama's election is both good news and bad news at the same time. Good news that it happened twice, bad news that it made things worse. And how those both things can be true, I do not know.
Well, let me just follow along on that track with another kind of question about that. I think you are very well known for always being willing to speak truth to power, and certainly sometimes to your own detriment. And this certainly happened during the Vietnam War and had major consequences in terms of being seated in the Georgia legislature, whether that was an excuse or not, but nonetheless, you had to fight that fight. And then I know you spoke out when you were the national chair of the NAACP, specifically on the issue of gay rights and lots of other rights, and I know you took a lot of heat for some of those things. If you could now speak truth to power to President Obama, what would you like to say to him?
Well, first, let me tell you something about the NAACP voting to support gay rights. I was chairman of the NAACP for 12 years. And for each of those 12 years, it was in my power to say, let's discuss same-sex marriage. And I just said, no, I won't do this because they'll vote no. And then the NAACP would be on record as taking the wrong position on an important issue, and it'll be my fault. Because I didn't trust my fellow board members to do the right thing. And one day, at the beginning of this year, last year rather, we were sitting at a board meeting, and somebody got up and made a motion to support gay marriage. And I said to people around me, I said, this is, wrong time to be doing this. This is not a good time to be doing this. And everybody said, okay, everybody said yes, they'd second that vote. And I thought, gee, what's something strange happening here? And then the person who had made the motion called for the question, and the question was called, and we voted for it, and 2 people voted no. Out of 64 people, 2 people voted no. And I was just amazed. I was amazed. And I saw how wrong I had been and how little faith I had in my fellow board members who, to a man and a woman with 2 exceptions, were able to embrace what was a staggeringly new idea for the organization, a staggeringly new idea for us. And I was so happy we had done it, and happy. Obama did it a week before we did, and that, of course, made it easier for us to do it. But the leader of one of the gay organizations told me that their polling showed that when Obama did it, people thought it was the right thing to do, but he did it because he's a politician. When the NAACP did it, we did it because it was the right thing to do. So back to speaking truth to power, the first time I ever heard that phrase was in high school. I went to a Quaker high school, the George School in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I was introduced to Quakerism and to nonviolence for the first time, and for a kind of worship that I always appreciated a great deal, the silent meeting where you sat in a room until somebody had a thought they wanted to share, and they'd share it, and they'd sit down and somebody else would say, that's a good thought, or I don't think that is a good thought, you shouldn't have said that. But it's just free discussion. As a form of worship, I grew to like a great deal. And I grew to have an appreciation for speaking truth to power, about being able to say whatever it was you wanted to say, whatever the circumstances were, as long as you were speaking in a civilized way, in a proper way, that you could exercise your freedom of speech whenever you wanted to. And I think my feeling about this comes from that I've always felt I could do that. And then I worked for this remarkable organization, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and we believed that we could say whatever we wanted to. And because we were young, we didn't have to do what our elders said we should do. We could do what we wanted to. And we had to be careful and polite as we were. But I've always thought I could speak truth to power, and I think I can do that now. And I think everybody here can do it. Not everybody wants to do it. Some people are afraid to do it, but everybody can do it. And all of you who've hesitated to do it ought to do it the first opportunity you get. Oh, Obama. If I could speak truth to power, I've been around Obama many times, when he was Senator Obama, when he was candidate Obama, when he was primary victor Obama, and since he's been President Obama. I've been around him many times. Never an occasion, except once, when I was able to say something to him in a kind of personal way, and I think I said something like, give them hell, or something like that. And I think that's what I would tell him if I had an occasion to have a conversation with him now. But I think he is a different person since the re-election campaign, and he really believes he won the election, and he's acting like it. And I think he's an entirely different person now than he used to be, and he doesn't need any encouragement from me. He's doing fine.
Well, you've just mentioned on a number of occasions your feeling about speaking truth to power when in your early years at SNCC. And this film has a number of different examples of your work at SNCC. But I know from the interview that I carried out with you as part of the Explorations in Black Leadership Project that you spoke at that interview about the meaning and value of SNCC for you for the rest of your years, and the power of being in that organization. And I wonder if you could just say a few words about that.
Well, I was introduced to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee at its founding. I was a student at Morehouse College in Atlanta. I was active in the embryonic Atlanta civil rights movement, the lunch counter sit-in movement. And out of the blue, we got a letter of invitation from a remarkable woman named Ella Baker, whom I had no knowledge of who she was or where she came from. A letter from her inviting us to come to a conference in Raleigh, North Carolina at Shaw University to talk with other young people from other colleges around the South who had also engaged in sit-in demonstrations, and talk about what the future held for us. And so some of my colleagues and I borrowed money from adults in Atlanta, borrowed somebody's car, and drove up to Raleigh, and found ourselves in the company of these couple of hundred other young people, some of whom were familiar to us because we'd seen them on TV at sit-in demonstrations. We'd seen them on the movies, in the newspapers, seen their pictures in the newspapers, sitting at a lunch counter here, there, and the others. So these people were known to us, and we had read about their behavior and read about what they'd done, and they were models to us, and we hoped we were models to them. And so we were at this meeting, were approached by the leadership of these other older organizations, the NAACP, Dr. King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Congress of Racial Equality, all these other organizations to become parts of these organizations. They wanted us to become the youth branch of this organization, or become youth branches of the NAACP, or to become youth branches of the Congress of Racial Equality, or youth branches of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And Ms. Baker said, we ought to form our own organization. We ought to be independent of these older people, because if these older people had done what we were going to do, what we had already done, they would have already done it. But they didn't do it, and so they weren't likely to do it in the future. So we created our own organization called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and we started elected officers. We found an office in Atlanta. We began to raise money. We never had much money. We began to raise money. And eventually, many of the people who went to the Raleigh meeting dropped out of college, and I eventually dropped out of college, much to my parents' horror, dropped out of college and worked for this organization full time. And we were all of a common age in our early 20s, some older, a few younger, but in our early 20s. And we thought we could manage our own business and do what needed to be done. And we thought we knew what needed to be done. And we were going to do things these adults were not doing. And we did things these adults were not doing. Now, there were the occasional adult who was on our side and who was participating with us and helping us along, but they were rare. And just the feeling of being with other young people, people my age, who had the same set of experiences I did, but who at the same time dared to take risks, dared to take chances. This was a wonderfully liberating idea, and it's remained with me from that day to this. I felt that way then, all these many years ago. This is 53 years ago when I did this, and I feel the same way now. I can do whatever I want to now. If I think it's the thing that ought to be done, I can do it, and I will do it. At least I hope I'll do it. I hope I won't ever get to the point where I say, well, I can't do that. I'm too old, or it's not the right thing to do, or people wouldn't like it, or something like that. I hope I never get to the point where that's true, because I've always believed I can say whatever I want to say and do whatever I want to do. And I think it came from being with these young people in SNCC. They taught me I could do that, and they were right.
And I think you also said that you formed absolute lifelong friendships from that have really formed the core of some of your deepest friendships from that time on. And in part, I believe you said in that earlier interview that we did together that it really came from the intensity of essentially being in the foxhole together.
Yes, the people I had this experience with are closer to me than the people I went to high school with, the people I went to college with, and the people I've been associated with at any other phase of my life. I'm closer to this cadre of people, of young people. I know them, I see them all the time. We're slipping away now, we're having funerals, we're dying, but we're still alive. Many of us are still alive, and we see each other all the time. We talk to each other all the time. We meet each other all the time. We see each other all the time. We follow each other's business and what we're doing all the time. We're close. And as I said, I'm closer to them than I am to any other group of people I've been associated with. And I find it odd because among my friends who haven't had this experience, it's their high school colleagues, their college classmates. But that's not true with me. I have a lot of college friends. I have some high school friends. But I'm closer to this group of people. And if I could sing, I'd sing this song. The time was 1960, the place the USA. February 1st became a history-making day. From Greensboro across the land, the news spread far and wide. As quietly and bravely, youth took a giant stride. Heed the call, Americans all, side by equal side. Sisters sit in dignity, brothers sit in pride. Now, I was a part of the greatest mass mobilization of black young people the United States has ever seen. There's never been another before or since. And let me speak just to the young people. There has never been such a mobilization before or since. Why not? Never such a mobilization before or since of black young people than happened in the 1960s. What's wrong with you all? What are you waiting for? Anyway.
Eduardo Montes-Bradley had to make choices in this relatively short film about what to cover. If there were another half hour of this film, if this were an hour documentary, what would you want to have represented, and what aspects of your diverse and rich engagement would you most want to be remembered for?
I tell you, for my wife and I, this is the first time we've seen the complete film. We've seen what they call in the business a slop copy, kind of a rough copy of it. And we've seen that a couple of times. This is the first time we've seen the complete film. And I'm not sure if I were making it again, what I would add that's not there. I think it's pretty good as is. I'm happy to see it. I was happy to see it. I enjoyed it. I liked it. There's always, could have been this, could have put this in, could have put that in. But I thought it was just wonderful as is. I'm happy with it as is. I'm happy he began to make it. And as I say, when he approached me about it, I was a little taken aback because I didn't know him. I'd never seen him. And I'd never seen any of his work. I did later see some of his work, and it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. But I had never seen anything he had done, and I didn't know if he could do this or who he was, but he did it, and it's good for me.
Okay. And I know we could go on for a long time talking here. I have one final question that I'd like to ask, because I know there are many other aspects of this program that we want to get onto. So my final question is, why are you so optimistic about the future? This film ends by saying, you know there will be people who'll step up. You know there will be good things that happen in the future. You're confident of that.
I think this optimism comes from life experience, that in my life, things have generally worked out for the better in my life. As I've done this turned out to be pretty good. I did this turned out to be pretty good. I did this, it turned out to be pretty good. And so my experience taught me that good things will happen. Not the most perfect thing, but good things will happen. And I think my parents were optimistic people. They believed that life would improve for their children and themselves. They had come from tough times and come through them and conquered them. So I just think I lived in an atmosphere of optimism. I thought things would get better. They did get better. I thought things would happen in my life for the better, and they did. So I guess for one reason or another, I was taught to be optimistic or learned to be optimistic, and I have been optimistic. I'm optimistic now. Henry Marsh says, raining outside. When we leave here, it will not be raining.
Well, Julian Bond, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of our community, our circle, our university, and for being my friend. It's been a deeply important part of my life.
Phyllis put together this Explorations in Black Leadership. Some of these things are on the web. You could look them up. And Henry, we will get you a copy of the interview. I know you will. And some of them are just fabulous. I mean, they're just wonderful. If you get an opportunity, you should look them up and see them. One of the best ones for me was an interview we did with Justice Clarence Thomas. And in the middle of the interview, I had met him at a book party at somebody's house and asked him if he would do this, and he agreed to do it. And we did it at the Supreme Court. And at the middle of the interview, I don't remember the specifics of this, I mentioned a court case that had ordered quotas in a case of racial discrimination. And he disputed me. He said, no, this didn't happen. And he stopped the interview, and he sent one of his clerks out to get a law book. And the clerk came back with the law book, and he looked it up, and I was right. I was right. And Phyllis made all this possible. Marcus was wrong. We haven't done 50. We've done 49. We hope that the 50th would be the president. We wrote the president. We asked if we could interview him, and we never got a response, I don't think. But, we're always hopeful. We're always optimistic. It may happen. We'd love to do it. But she was the engine behind this and made it possible. And this book that she has written is going to be a wonderful book about explorations in black leadership. We try to take this group of leadership figures in Black America of diverse kinds, from diverse professions, diverse people, and find out what was it that made them tick. How did Joe or John or Mary or Sue get to be who they are? And the answers are just enormous, not enormous, just interesting. You get a look into these people's lives. One thing I think that surprised me, I don't know if I ever told Phyllis, one thing that surprised me is what a great influence the Boy Scouts played in the lives of many of these men, because it played a tiny, tiny role in my life. Cub Scouts, really. But it played a big, big role in the lives of so many, and I had never dreamed that to be true. And I'm sure they'd be happy. They need all the good news they can get. So I know they'll be happy to hear that.
Thank you again.
So thank you, and thank you all for coming.
Just stay there. Yeah, just stay right there. Yeah. Well, Julian and Phyllis, thank you for a great conversation. That was just outstanding, and for the optimism. But I want to remind everybody, don't leave your umbrellas, all right? Better take your umbrellas with you when you leave tonight. Okay. Now, I'm going to introduce resolution, the 2012 Special Session House Joint Resolution number 5028, was agreed to by the Virginia House of Delegates and the Senate. And the resolution commends Horace Julian Bond. And here to present the resolution is our own delegate, David J. Toscano. Delegate Toscanos represents the 57th District, Virginia House of Delegates. So thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Marcus. And I'll tell you, what a great event. It's so great to be back in Charlottesville, let me tell you. I had committee meetings this afternoon, and unlike the Senate, we don't get proxies in the House. We got to stay to the end. And fortunately, I was able to get out. So I'm very pleased to be here with Julian, and very pleased to have seen the movie. Eduardo, you did a great job. It was great to be here with President Sullivan and, of course, my friend Phyllis Leffler. I'm looking forward to looking at that book with Marcus as well, and to be in this great facility, the Paramount. Thanks very much for allowing us to be here. And, of course, my dear friend Senator Marsh, who's done such a tremendous job in the Virginia General Assembly for such a long time. He's an inspiration to all of us. He keeps fighting every day for the values that we consider important in Virginia. It's really an honor to present this resolution tonight as someone who came of age during the Civil Rights Movement and the movement against the war in Vietnam, and having studied and been an activist in the nonviolent struggle to try to better the lives of so many people in this country and to save the lives of a lot of people around the world. I tell you, you have been an inspiration to me since I was in college, and it's just a great honor for me to present this. One of the things that I really have admired about you, Julian, is the way you combine your gentlemanly character with that passion, that fire that burns within you. That brings tremendous power. And we need more of that power, frankly, in the Virginia General Assembly. And to think you did it in Georgia. Oh, my God. Well, you have inspired all of us with your passion, with your idealism, with your civility, and I'm very pleased to present this on behalf of Senator Marsh, the Senate of Virginia, and the House of Delegates, this commending resolution, which I'm not going to read, but passed by both the House and the Senate of Virginia. Hallelujah.
Thank you, Delegate Toscano. You know, in all the years I've been in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia, I kept hearing about this man, whom I met a couple of times. I kept hearing about this man because he was a bright light in the General Assembly of Virginia. I'm not saying there are not other bright lights there, but not as many as one would hope. And I was just reminded of an occasion that happened to me. I served in the Georgia House, and then I served in the Senate. And I was told when I moved from the one to the other, the IQ went up in both places. Thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Toscano. We really appreciate you taking the time to come over. We know you're quite busy over in Richmond. So we're going to welcome the Knightengales. We need to move a few things around on the stage, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce the Knightengales. The Knightengales are directed by Mr. Will Cook, and they are Charlottesville High School's premier all-female choral ensemble. These dedicated and talented young ladies maintain a very busy performance schedule. In addition to 4 annual CHS concerts, they appear at numerous community and charitable events throughout the year. So, we have a treat tonight, the CHS Knightengales.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us. How do you choose music for a living legend? I don't know. But we tried to come up with something that you will enjoy. Our first piece this evening will be a piece called Ride on King Jesus. It's written by one of the most amazing contemporary composers. His name is Moses Hogan, whose life ended far too soon, but his music lives on and is a stunning arrangement. Hope you will enjoy it. And our second piece is something that I'm sure must have been in the mind of Mr. Bond and all of his fellow civil rights forerunners, is that it's called Nothing's Gonna Stumble My Feet. So here you go.
Ride on, King Jesus. been a walking with the Lord for many a day. Nothing gonna stumble my feet, trying to abide in the straight and narrow way. Nothing gonna stumble my feet. But when my time on earth is done, and I hear my name, and I hear my name. Oh, when my time on earth is done, these weary feet are gonna run. Not gonna stammer, not gonna trip, not gonna stumble. No, I'm not gonna slip, no, nothing gonna stumble my feet when I go to walk that golden street. Now the devil is a liar and a cheater too. Nothing gonna stumble my feet. And if he gets his way, he'll make a slider out of you. Nothing gonna stumble my feet. But if you listen for the Spirit's voice in the moment of truth, moment of truth. Oh, if you listen for the Spirit's voice, he'll help you make the right choice. Not gonna stammer, not gonna trip, not gonna stumble. No, I'm not gonna slip, no, nothing gonna stumble my feet when I go to walk that golden street, that golden street. Not gonna waver, falter, sway or fall. Not gonna tumble or slide. Not gonna waver, falter, sway or fall. Not gonna stumble at all. No, not gonna stammer, not gonna trip, not gonna stumble. No, I'm not gonna slip, no, nothing gonna stumble my feet when I go to walk that golden street. Not gonna stammer, not gonna trip, not gonna stumble. No, I'm not gonna slip, no, nothing gonna stumble my feet when I go to walk that golden street. No, not gonna stammer, not gonna trip, not gonna stumble. No, I'm not gonna slip, no, nothing gonna stumble my feet when I go to walk that golden street, that golden street. Not gonna stammer, not that golden street. No, I'm not that golden street. Not that golden street. No, I'm not that golden street. Not that golden street. No, I'm not gonna slip when I go to walk that golden street. Not gonna stumble my feet.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mr. Will Cook and the Knightengales. Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, this has been a wonderful and very enjoyable evening. But we're coming to a close, and just before we leave, I do want to thank our sponsors for supporting this remarkable event. The Office of the Vice President and Chief Officer for Diversity and Equity, Office of Engagement, and I'd like to thank Senior Vice President Bob Sweeney, College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, thank you, Dean Meredith Wu, the Office of the VP Chief Human Resources Officer, thank you, VP Susan Karkeek, and the Office of the Vice President for Research, thank you, VP Tom Skalak. And we also like to thank the Paramount Theater for its wonderful support. And thank you, Chris Ewer and your staff. Chris Ewer is the Executive Director of the Paramount Theater. And Chris, would you please come up and make a few comments?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I'd like to say that they saved the best for last, but I think you all will guess that I'm not telling the truth. No offense to the gentleman on the stage with me. Thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of this special celebration. As Dr. Martin said, I'm Chris Ewer, Executive Director, and we are so pleased that you could join us for this wonderful Martin Luther King celebration. Before we conclude our program this evening, we have a very exciting announcement to share with you. As many of you know, the Paramount is a nonprofit theater, and we are committed to enriching our community through education, high-quality arts, and community-centered events. just like our event tonight. Support from our community includes donors and corporate sponsors that ensures that we are able to give the best of the Paramount back to the community. I am pleased to announce tonight that Virginia National Bank, our leading community bank, is the newest producer club sponsor of community programming at the Paramount. Their support of our mission flows to every corner of our local community. Producers Club sponsors bolster the arts education program, the Community Access Fund, and laughing at the rain, Dr. Bond, I'm sure it's going to stop, though, I'm sure it will. It is integral to our mission, and I ask that you join me in welcoming and thanking William Dittmar and Hunter Craig, who will say a few words on the bank's behalf. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for your support.
What an evening, and what a career. The first time that I encountered Julian Bond was over 40 years ago. I was a young college student involved with the Student Mobilization Committee, and Julian came and spoke. I was dressed in fatigues with peace symbols and long hair and combat boots. Julian was dressed much as he is tonight, and while many of us at that meeting were strident, Julian spoke with the same voice that he always speaks with, of reason and calmness. In those 40 years, my wardrobe has changed, but Julian has always been a voice for equality, for all men being created equal, and for everyone having unalienable rights. And I will always remember him for that. I respect him, and I'm honored to be part of this. Julian Bond.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Bill. I was handed a sanitized script, but I'm going to speak from my heart. I think over the past 6 months, we've all read and heard too many sanitized scripts. It's a high honor to be here tonight with Julian Bond, but tonight would not be possible if it were not for one person who I admire and who has done extraordinary things for this community, the University of Virginia, and all the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I think President Sullivan is a rock star. And I would like to personally thank Teresa Sullivan for her determined adherence to her vision for Mr. Jefferson's University. And thank you very much for your extraordinary leadership over the last 2.5 years. Please join me in a round of applause for Terry and Julian Bond. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Good night and safe travels.
So thank you very much, Chris, Bill, and Hunter. And I just have a few remaining remarks. The past 2 weeks, the community and the university have come together in dedication to the ideals of equality, civility, and mutual respect. Let us dedicate ourselves to these ideals not just for these few weeks of celebration in January, but every day, every month, throughout every year. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Your attendance here tonight made this program very special. And to Julian, we thank you for your lifelong dedication to human rights and social justice, and your commitment and service to the University of Virginia for more than 2 decades. And we just thank you for being a friend. So our best wishes to you and Pam, and Godspeed.